there's a deeply human experience that we all share, the struggle between our higher values and our subconscious desires. We've all been in situations where, despite our best intentions, we acted in ways that went against what we truly believed. And in those moments, we can feel a profound disconnect between who we aspire to be and the person we are. Today, we delve into one of the most powerful stories that encapsulates this inner conflict. The story of Peter's denial of Jesus. It is a story that goes far beyond simple betrayal. It's a narrative that challenges us to confront the nature of human motivation, the battle between the flesh and the spirit, and the grace that can transform even our most profound failures. As we explore Peter's journey, we'll uncover psychological insights to understand the deep subconscious motivations that guide us in ways we are often unaware of. We'll see how Peter, despite his sincere devotion to Jesus, was driven by unconscious motivations, and how he ultimately overcame them. This transformation offers a powerful lesson about growth, redemption, and the true nature of divine grace. When Jesus tells Peter that he will deny him 3 times before the rooster crows, Peter's response is immediate and adamant. "Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you." He speaks with deep conviction. Peter truly believes in his heart that his devotion to Christ is unshakable. He feels that in his spirit, he would die for Jesus. His words are not mere empty boasts. They are the honest reflection of his inner truth, the way he perceives his devotion to be. But then, in the midst of fear, confusion, and the overwhelming pressure of the situation, Peter does deny Christ. Not once, but 3 times. The gap between Peter's genuine intentions and his actions is staggering. So what happened? How could the same man who swore unwavering allegiance to Jesus betray him in the blink of an eye? The heart of this moment reveals a deep psychological truth. Our motivations are not always under our conscious control. Peter's denial wasn't a deliberate betrayal. It was the result of his subconscious motivations at play. It's crucial to understand that in that moment, Peter's mind and spirit were in conflict. His higher intention, his desire to follow Christ, is rooted in his spirit, his deepest truth. But his flesh, his primal desire for safety, belonging, and the avoidance of social ostracization, took over in the moment of trial. This isn't just fear we're talking about. This is the primal, subconscious drive for social conformity. In that moment, Peter wasn't just afraid of the consequences of being associated with Jesus. He was also unconsciously compelled to fit in with the crowd, to avoid the harsh judgment and rejection that would come from standing apart. We all have this impulse to some extent, the need to belong, to avoid social alienation, and to protect our self-image from being tarnished by the judgments of others. Peter's denial was a reaction to the overpowering pressure of social conformity. He wasn't a coward. He wasn't lying when he said he would never betray Christ. He truly meant it. His spirit was in alignment with that truth. But the flesh, the unconscious desire for safety and acceptance, overpowered his spirit in that moment. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow offers a powerful lens through which we can view this conflict. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we are often unaware of, those subconscious aspects that influence our behavior, thoughts, and decisions without us realizing it. These hidden parts can sometimes be beneficial, but they often act in ways that don't align with our conscious intentions. Peter's denial was a clear manifestation of his shadow. His shadow was not made up of evil impulses, but of the unconscious desire for approval, comfort, and acceptance. These desires were not evil. They were simply unconscious motivations that superseded his higher spiritual resolve when the pressure was on. This is a key psychological insight. The shadow is not inherently bad. It's simply the part of us that hasn't yet been integrated into our conscious awareness. And in moments of crisis, the shadow takes over. When Peter denied Jesus, he wasn't consciously choosing fear over devotion. He was being driven by deeper, unconscious motivations, the need to protect himself, to avoid discomfort, and to preserve his sense of belonging. He was acting from a place of primal instinct, not from his higher spiritual self. And this is a crucial point. Our failures often arise from parts of us that we haven't fully examined or integrated. These subconscious drives can lead us astray, even when our conscious intentions are noble. Now let's add another layer of depth to Peter's story. Jesus knew that Peter would deny him. In fact, he predicted it. Yet despite his knowledge of Peter's impending failure, Jesus still declared Peter to be the rock upon which he would build his church. This is a profound moment of grace. Jesus, knowing that Peter would falter, chose him anyway. Jesus saw beyond Peter's moment of weakness and betrayal. He saw Peter's potential for transformation. And this is where the story of Peter becomes deeply theological. God's purposes for us are not contingent upon our perfection. Our mistakes, our fallibility, do not disqualify us from fulfilling the roles we've been called to. For Peter, this moment of failure became a turning point. His betrayal was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of his transformation. Jesus' trust in Peter, despite his failure, is a lesson in divine grace. It shows that God doesn't see us just for who we are in our moments of failure, but for who we can become. The divine foresight of Jesus shows us that our worth is not determined by our mistakes, but by our potential for growth and redemption. After Jesus' resurrection, the fear that led Peter to deny Christ is no longer the primary motivation in his life. In the face of the same kind of social rejection and persecution, Peter no longer acts out of self-preservation. His fear no longer rules him. Instead, he becomes a bold, unwavering advocate for the faith, even to the point of martyrdom. This transformation represents the triumph of the Spirit over the flesh. Peter, once motivated by the instinctual drive to protect himself and to fit in with the crowd, is now motivated by a deep, unshakable love for Christ. The shift from fear and social conformity to spiritual devotion is the essence of Peter's redemption. It's a shift from living by the flesh to living by the Spirit, a shift that we can all aspire to. Peter's ultimate martyrdom is the culmination of this transformation. His willingness to die for his faith shows the depth of his devotion, which has now fully eclipsed the fears and desires of the flesh. The grace that he experienced through Jesus' forgiveness and the empowering presence of the Holy Spirit completely reshapes his motivations. The man who once denied Christ now lives for Christ with an unwavering devotion. Peter's story teaches us several profound truths about human nature, divine grace, and the process of transformation. Failure is not final. Peter's denial was not the end of his story. It was a catalyst for his growth. His failure became the foundation for his greatest strength as it humbled him and made him more dependent on Christ. The power of grace. Jesus' choice of Peter, despite his foreknowledge of Peter's failure, shows us that divine grace allows us to fulfill our purposes despite our imperfections. Our worth and calling are not based on our performance, but on God's grace. Transformation is possible. Peter's journey from fear to boldness, from the flesh to the Spirit, reminds us that transformation is always possible. We can grow, learn from our failures, and be empowered by grace to live in alignment with our higher values. Like Peter, we all struggle with the flesh, But as his story illustrates, these motivations do not have to define us. We can, through grace, be transformed. Peter's ultimate devotion and martyrdom are proof that transformation is possible. The shift from the flesh to the spirit, from fear to devotion, is not just possible. It is the very essence of our faith.